Okay, everybody, hello. My name is Rob Sneller. I'm a firefighter paramedic at Jackson Township. And today we're going to do some training covering May Day. Hopefully you'll excuse the type of presentation this is. I know that in recent years we've become accustomed to some online virtual type of training, so that's kind of what we'll be doing today. I normally will be doing this in person, but as things go, I'm not working for the rest of the month. I'm on FMLA taking care of my wife who just had surgery, so I'm at home right now. And as you might hear, my son who has special needs is in the room, so you might hear him from time to time, but hopefully this will be a good and informative presentation. Today we're going to be covering the topic of May Days. May Day is a very important topic when it comes to the fire service. May Day has a rich history that we'll talk about, and is it's currently used as a primary tactic for any firefighter that's in trouble or in need of assistance. So we'll just get right into the presentation here. So today we want to talk about what a May Day is. We'll talk about exactly what it is and where it came from, as well as different ways of doing it. We want to talk about also what are some risk factors that contribute to May Day situations. And then there may be several different types and ways of calling a May Day, and we'll talk about them, and we'll talk about the most effective ways that we can use to actually call a May Day. So first off, we're going to start by listening to an example of radio communications of when a May Day occurred. This is going to be a partial recording of the radio communications from a fire that happened in the Houston Fire Department's district on March 28th, 2007. Pictured here is the firefighter that was involved in the May Day. His name is Captain Apt. He's a 15-year veteran firefighter for the City of Houston Fire, and he was responding with multiple other units to victims trapped. Specifically, his unit for victims trapped on the 5th floor of a residence. It was an arson fire, and he stated that on his arrival, he noticed that there were several victims being extricated from the building via a ladder. And when he arrived on scene, the incident commander told him and his crew to make entry and go up to the 5th floor for victim rescue. There was a report of victims on the phone saying that they were trapped in the building, and we'll play some audio here so we can listen to some of the story here, and we'll talk about what happens.
Command with report of a female victim on the 5th floor on the telephone. She's stuck somewhere. Northern Command, Engine 8, your report.
Okay, that was just a short excerpt from the radio communication, but I think it makes the point of what I was trying to get across here. The captain was a 15-year veteran who actually survived this incident. Thankfully, he was saved by some of the ladder crews that were on scene there that went in to help and work as a red team. The story that the captain tells us is that he and his crew were making entry up to the 5th floor. They started to experience heavy heat, heavy smoke, zero visibility conditions. The captain said that he had a thermal imaging camera, but the excessive heat of the situation caused the camera to fail, so that they could see that it was so hot that the hand railing and the stairwell that they were going up was glowing red. He told the other 2 members of his crew to go back downstairs and grab a hose line, but the captain continued up searching for the victims. He found 2 victims, but was physically unable to remove them from the building. He said it in the video, and I think that is a classic example of many of the Mayday's calls and radio communications that you would hear, because it's a very hectic situation. It's a very hard to communicate. It's very small bits of information come out, and you could hear that the captain was very fatigued. He's breathing very quickly. He was trying to get out information, but it's very hard for the incident commander to understand what he was saying, and therefore direct crews to find and save him. This situation, like I said, had a happy ending. He was able to get his location out, and so that he was on the 5th floor near a window, and then the incident commander ended up resulting on having the ladder companies on scene just to use the ladder trucks as battering rams and knock out all the windows on the 5th floor until they found him and they got him out of the building. But what this was trying to demonstrate is that Mayday situations are going to be very hectic situations. They're going to be very labor intensive, and they're going to be very hard to disseminate and gather all the information and move the crews. So hopefully with this presentation we become more aware as to why Maydays happen and how we can potentially help resolve them with good outcomes like this. In the fire service, we risk a lot to save a lot, and that's exactly what the captain here, Captain Apt, was doing. He knew he was in a bad situation, and from his testimony afterwards, he knew that it was difficult, and he knew that asking his crew to leave to go get a hose line made things difficult, but he held true to the slogan that we have in the fire service: we risk a lot to save a lot. So he knew that there were people trapped. They were on the telephone, so he thought them to be savable victims, so he went up to try to save them. Looking at the stats of the fire service in general, we have seen a trend of the amount of fires that we have every year going down. But with this decrease in the amount of actual fires that we're having, we continue to see statistically that the amount of firefighter fatalities have stayed relatively the same. Because of this, the fire service has tried to, in the last several years, to change some tactics and try to put firefighter survival training into the forefront of many of their trainings that they do. Many different organizations outside of just specific fire departments, but places like FDTN or other high caliber training organizations put on a lot of firefighter survival classes, just to kind of help with this, because it's plain that something's happening, that although the fires are decreasing, the firefighter fatalities are remaining constant. So let's talk about the term Mayday. The term Mayday as a universal distress call, it's something that originated in the 1920s by a man named Frederick Mockford. He was a senior radio officer in London. This was around the times of the First and Second World War, and it was for a universal distress call that originated with the Air Force, the London Air Force. The term that it comes from is a French word called médire, and for all of you non-French speaking people in the audience, I have the word here for you in French so you can hear what it sounds like.
The phrase for "can you help me" is
Pouvez-vous m'aider? Pouvez-vous m'aider?
M'aider. So that's the French word for come and help me. So it's been shortened down to just the final word, Mayday, or Maydeer, but Mayday for us. And like many things in the fire service, we adopted it from the military, and now it's a universal distress code, really for all branches of any type of service. In the fire service, hundreds of Mayday calls go out by fire department personnel every year. And there's been a great effort in the past several years to train firefighters on survival and use of Mayday. A lot of save yourselves and grit training. The fire service has also teamed up with other companies such as UL, the fire service using NFPA. They've worked over the last several years to try to help mitigate some of the firefighter fatalities. In 2013, the NFPA NFPA 1981 was revised to help increase safety and become in line with the NFPA 1404 standards with using reserve air. So what they did is they increased the requirement for when the low air alarms would go off to raise it from 25 to 33%, with the hopes that that would initiate evacuating a building with more air intact to give firefighters more time to get out. They've increased the standards for the amount of heat that a face piece can withstand. They've also made sure that all SCBA face pieces are required to have mechanical speaking systems. Something that we can notice from the Mayday call that we heard earlier is that I don't know if he had a voice amp or not on that, but even with one, it's still very hard to communicate. So that's something that they're starting to require for all of them, and hopefully as time goes, technology will get better so that we can all understand each other more. So when do Mayday situations happen? In 2014, a study was done by Project Mayday. That was a separate organization that tried to put together and figure out statistically when Maydays happen. They pulled in 2 PhD statisticians to help go through all the information that they got on the Maydays to try to figure out if they can kind of pinpoint what specific causes might lead to Mayday situations. They studied 293 firefighter Maydays from 264 different departments across the United States and 43 of these states. So what are some reasons you would call a Mayday? What factors contribute to Mayday situations? Well, the study showed that the number one issue that led to Maydays being called as the lack of a 360 and proper size of an incident. That was a contributing factor to 50% of all Maydays, and if you lump in incomplete 360s, that bumps it up to 73%, a contributing factor to when a Mayday would be called. Another factor is time of day. 50% of all Maydays occur between midnight and 6 o'clock in the morning. 73% of Maydays happened on the second half of the shift. I think that we can all kind of understand that. That's when we've worked long hours, we've worked all day long, probably taking runs all throughout the day. Now we're getting up at nighttime, we're fatigued, we're physically fatigued, we're mentally fatigued, and that's showing that 73% happened in the second half of the shift. 67% of Maydays occur when the command is mobile. So think about that in a practical situation. Generally speaking, the first incoming fire truck is going to take a mobile command, so it shows that it's probably going to have a limited amount of crews on scene early into the incident. We don't have an outside command. Definitely don't go farther into and having safety officers. So 67% is when command is mobile. 71 happened when the company officer stayed outside to be a fixed command, sending their crew in without them. So that I definitely can see where that comes from, and I could assume that there's probably more in smaller staff, probably more volunteer types areas where maybe your mutual aid response is more delayed, and you try to have a fixed command outside, but that takes your company officer out out of the interior attack and sends in your hopefully more senior person to be more of an inside command. 54% of Maydays occur to members of the crew on the first arriving company, most happening within 7 to 9 minutes of the first arriving company officer. So that kind of backs up what we just talked about it seems that the majority of Maydays are going to happening to the first crew initially as they first get on scene. That 7 to 9 minutes shows, if you can play it out logically, that low amount of staffing and crews are on scene. You're working on getting your water supply. You're not 100% sure of all the situations, so you can see where that could be a hazardous situation. 62% of firefighters Maydays occur on overtime shifts. That backs up also what we were talking about in the second half of your shift. Now, overtime, that along with trades, you're extending your shift, so whatever fatigue, mental or physical fatigue you were having, now you're just doubling your time on shift, so you're now doubling that opportunity for you to have that fatigue play out as a Mayday. 67% are some kind of falls. That includes slips, trips, or structural collapse. 40% happen during salvage and overhaul. 38% happened in vacant or abandoned structures. 48% were firefighters operating without a hose line. That one right there reminds me of the radio communication we heard earlier with the captain. He was operating without a hose line. Radio communications, 40% of Maydays called were on the wrong channel. It seems like some of these things are situations that we can't avoid, but some of these are just simple little mistakes that can compound and lead to big incidents. So of all these, who rescued the Mayday firefighters? 22% self-rescued. 25% same crew that was with the firefighter. 30% some other interior crew, and only 10% were the rig company. When going through the study, that was surprising to me because we usually train to say if you have a Mayday or have a down firefighter, it's the rig crew who goes in to save them. It was interesting to find that only 10% were that made up that amount of saves. And I guess to think about it, thankfully people might have called early and were able to self-rescue. Or with the 25 and 30%, hopefully that means that they were nearby other crews and the other crews were there and they could help out. But that 10% where if all of that couldn't happen, it seems like those are the more intense scenarios. Those are the scenarios where they're potentially trapped, where they're disoriented and they've moved away from all other crews where no one else is there to help them. So in that situation, that would need the rig company to come and help them. I know with my crew in my department, we have many times practiced what it might feel like and how long it would take for us to run through air. And that will vary based on the person, based on who you are and your physical fitness levels and your breathing techniques and such. But the Phoenix Fire Department did a study on how long it takes on average for a rig company to perform a rescue, and they found it to be 22 to 28 minutes for a rig company to get started, make entry, find, and remove a firefighter. So that's something to consider and something to think about. So what are some ways to call a Mayday? There's been many different ways. Like the fire service, seems like everyone has their own idea. Different classes will teach you different things. But it's really what's most important is for you and your department to come up with a standardized way that you want to do it and what you think is going to be best to get the important information out. A couple of the more popular ones would be the lunar, which would mean location, unit, name, assignment, and resources needed. UCAN, unit number, conditions, assignment, and needs. Or the WWW, where are you, who are you, and what do you need. My department for years has operated under the lunar policy, which thankfully, in the last 2 years, we've changed our policy going to the www. Like listening to the radio traffic earlier, it's very hard to understand what someone might be saying. It's very hard to get communication and information out. So I think the most simple way of breaking down the information, the better. So who are you? Where are you? What do you need? Quick, simple information that's all vital to perform a rescue if needed. And lastly, what I'll go over here is the picture that you see. It's a Paul Combs animation, but it's actually rings very true. You see the firefighter is entangled. He's calling him Mayday, and he's saying to himself, "Okay, okay," as in he's finally submitting to his pride to say that he'll call Mayday. But the angel there on the right says, "No, it's too late." What that kind of is telling me is that firefighters need to check their pride, and if they are in a situation where they feel like they need to call Mayday and they need help, call as soon as you can. And that concludes the presentation. Thank you for your attention. I hope you learned something.